Welcome, everybody, to the Zoning Board of Adjustment regular meeting, October 6, 2022. Adequate notice of this meeting has been given, been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act at least 48 hours prior to the commencement of this meeting by prominently posting in the municipal complex an announcement giving the time, the date, the location, the agenda of this meeting. So by mailing such announcement to the Home News and Tribune, filing such copy of such announcements with the municipal clerk, and also posting the agenda on the municipal website. Ms. C, can we have a roll call, please?
Chairman Sullivan,
Here.
Mr. Connor,
Here.
Mr. Stoner,
Here.
Ms. Chevalier is absent, Mr. Scogno,
Here.
Ms. Andrews, Ms. Testaverde,
Here.
Mr. Psychowski is absent, Mr. Dasty,
Here.
Ms. Shapiro,
Here.
Ms. Sawant,
Here.
Mr. Proska,
Here.
Mr. Hart, and myself, Ms. C. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have one resolution on the agenda this evening, board members. It's a 16-2022Z, Brock Carson. That was a C variance. Mr. Dasty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This matter was heard at the last board hearing. It is a. I apologize. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This matter was heard at the last board meeting. This is for Brock Carson, block 5000.25, lot 20, otherwise known as 201 Princeton Road. It was an application for bulk variance relief pursuant to NJSA 40:55D-70C with regard to a a paver patio in the side yard setback. The board found at the public hearing that the granting of the variance is not inconsistent with the intent and purpose of the master plan, zone plan, or zoning ordinances. And the granting of the variance would not be it carries with it the general purpose and zoning for the general welfare, and granting the variance will not be a substantial detriment to the public good, the zone plan, or zoning ordinance. As a result, the board finds that the current patio placement, bulk variance relief is necessary, and that the resolution memorializes the findings of the board at the last meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Dasty. Board members, you've heard the resolution. Does someone want to move for adoption?
I'll move it, Connor.
Is there a second?
Second, Stoner.
Mr. Stoner seconds. Roll call, please, Ms. C.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Ms. Andrews,
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. Just as a matter of housekeeping, before we go to our first application, those in the courtroom this evening and those are probably watching from home, this is televised on the local cable network, the CATV 15. Which also, I believe, simultaneously broadcast on YouTube Live. So we need the use of the microphones, and I would remind all the board members, please check and make sure your green light is on when you're going to speak, as well as those from the public who may be speaking tonight or testifying. Please make sure you speak directly into the microphone and make sure that it's on. Most of our items tonight, there's going to be a court reporter here who's going to take that down. So please bear that in mind. Someone else is trying to take the record down. So when you are testifying, make sure that the court reporter can hear you. And again, if you're going to talk from the public this evening, we're going to ask you to come forward. You would be sworn in by the board attorney, and then you would testify as to what you would like to tell us about the application. There'll be two applications tonight as they're listed. They're going to be taken as they're listed on our agenda. If you look, there's a third one listed for this evening. That number is 50-2021Z OBNJ LLC. That's the EDO 1 zone. We're seeking major preliminary and final site plan for the C&D variance. The applicant has asked that that matter be adjourned for the evening, and we're going to place it on the agenda for November 3rd, 2022. No further notice. So if you're here on that matter this evening, that's OBNJ LLC. Location is 69 Highway 35 in Elbridge for an apartment addition. That matter will not be heard this evening. Okay?
Chairman,
We'll go on our agenda for 11:30.
Chairman, did I hear November 3rd?
We're just, Mr. Dasty?
I was just going to say, Vina, it was just going to be a control date. I don't know that it'll actually be heard that night, but we need to make an announcement as to what date it's going to be kicked to. And then that way the applicant doesn't have to renotice,
Okay.
at least in the interim point. Then at the November 3rd date, if there's a
You
future
just-
date that we decide, we can then kick into that
That is fine because we did issue our memo. There were some concerns that the professionals had. And I did talk to Mr. Alfieri, who is the attorney, and we will be meeting with the professionals in the coming week to resolve any issues before they're heard.
We certainly don't expect for it to be actually heard on November 3rd, but we need
Sure.
it's good to have a control date. So if anyone's here, they know to come back on November 3rd or, so.
No problem.
Thank you, Mr. Swan. All right, we'll move forward with the applications for the evening. As I said, they will be taken in order. The first one is 06-2022Z, Reliance Adult Daycare, Inc. This is medium-density residential R15. Location is 18 Marlborough Road for a senior daycare facility. Applicant seeking major preliminary and final site plan with C&D variances. David Himmelman is representing the applicant. Mr. Himmelman. Yep, if you have the green button, there you go. Green light, I should say.
Yeah, there you go. Better. Okay. Mr. Chairman, nice to see you. Nice to see the board members and all the professionals here this evening. My name is David Himmelman, and I represent the applicant, Reliance Adult Daycare. Mr. Chairman, as you recall, we were here back in June on this application. Since that time, we did have an opportunity to meet with Nicole and with Vina to review the plans and many of the comments that have been originally generated in the staff report. And I want to thank Nicole and Vina, and Damien was there, I believe, at the meeting, because their insight into this application, Mr. Chairman, was very helpful, guiding both our engineer and the applicant on this. I did, at the last meeting, Mr. Chairman, I gave a very detailed opening statement. I'm going to rely on that opening statement. I don't think we need to go through that statement in detail. I would like just to point out a couple of items and we did get, and I'm sure the board received, we did get an updated memorandum from Nicole and Vina, which is dated today, and takes us through all the comments, and in many aspects, they gave very insightful comments where we've complied with their recommendations and other areas where they'd like to see further revisions. Just a couple of highlights. We did modify the square footage of the building. We reduced the building, which you can tell it's now 13,335 square feet, which affects the occupancy load, which will also be reduced accordingly from 200 to 175 persons. We have addressed many of the comments relating to the site plan itself, which our engineer will go through in some detail on those, including landscaping, lighting, the additional improvements along Route 18, addressing the stormwater comments. We also have addressed, and we'll be prepared to review in more detail, the parking issues, which I know the board had raised at the last meeting, whether there's sufficient parking, and our traffic engineer will address that. There are also one of the comments that Nicole and Vina had at the last meeting was related to the right-of-way dedication, if you recall. And so our engineer has submitted the plans sort of in the alternative, which does affect the FAR variance, which Vina and Nicole did point out in the memo, so we'll address that. What I would like to suggest, Mr. Chairman, is we have several witnesses. The applicant is here again tonight. I don't plan on having him specifically testify unless there are specific questions on operations, but we will have our engineer, architect, traffic consultant, and planner who will testify. And so if you and or the board members or staff doesn't have any further questions, I would like to proceed with our first witness, who is our engineer who was sworn in previously, Sri.
Mr. Himmelman, if he would just put his identity and his
Yep.
credentials for those watching at home who may not
I
have
will do
watched
that.
last time. Thank
I will
you,
do
sir.
that. Sri,
You've
why don't
already
you
been
have a seat?
sworn, though.
Shri, although you were sworn in and qualified at the last meeting, why don't you just identify yourself for the record and your relationship to the applicant as far as this matter is concerned?
I'm the land use engineer for the applicant. My name is Shri J. Kodawala. I live in Manalapan, New Jersey, and I'm a professional engineer since 1998.
Thank you. That was for those at home.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Uh, Picked up? Yeah,
Yes, yours
okay,
is-
great. So Shri, it's my understanding that I believe we met with the professional staff, I think it was July 6th, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? Yeah. And at that time, we had had an extensive meeting with staff, and you obviously were there and went through many of the comments from staff. You did submit a cover letter, I believe, with your revised plans, which is dated September 8th, which gave an overview and summary of the plan revisions. And if you could just highlight for us the comments that you addressed, and obviously they've been now referenced in the memorandum today of October 6th. And we can certainly have the board ask any questions or staff, but I think many of the comments that you addressed in your September 8th letter are addressed in this memorandum. Okay, thank you.
So basically, what we have made changes is reduce the size of the building. Everything, if you look at the old map and
Great, got to take the mic. Hey, why don't you take this one?
That would probably be
You
better.
take that one, you be the comedian.
okay, here is the map, which looks similar to last time we came here. It's just the size of the building is reduced by 800 square feet. And the reason for that reduction was based on our meeting with Township. We had to dedicate a right-of-way along the Marlborough Road. And because of that dedication, we had to reduce the size of the building. And that was the only big change as far as that, like geometrically, you look at the building, but there are a lot of minor changes we did as far as the orientation of like accesses, the changes, like putting some green islands in a parking lot. Did some major revision to our landscaping plan where we are trying to keep the existing trees as well as adding new trees. Before we were removing the existing trees and putting all new trees. So kind of we are providing a buffer with the neighboring home, which will include evergreens as well as the existing native trees. So these are the major changes, but there is a multiple technical comments, and we have addressed all of them, but there are some further comments came in, and I have reviewed all the comments, and we can address those comments like easily. We don't see, we are not going to ask for any waivers from those comments. So wherever we have a deficiency noted, we will be able to fulfill those deficiencies.
Shri, thank you. Just a couple of other items. So, Mr. Lavallo, the Township Conservation Officer, did issue a memorandum June 2nd. I know you met with him, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
we had a field meeting.
Are we in a position to comply with his requested revisions and/or amendments to the plan regarding the landscaping?
Yes.
So we'll comply with that. And I think you've already addressed some of those in your landscaping plan, correct?
Right.
Okay. Next, I know that you submitted the plans, and you just reiterated with regard to the right-of-way dedication. Right. And I don't know if you've had an opportunity to review Nicole and Vina's memorandum, but I think they still indicated that we are slightly over the variance, assuming there's a dedication, correct? Okay.
For a FAR, we are like 2% higher than what we are allowed.
Bless you. Fair. And do you agree with that assessment?
Correct. Yes.
Fair enough. Okay. All right. So are there any other suggested modifications to the plan that were revised and also addressed in the memorandum today and/or your plans that you want to highlight, or you've covered everything?
Yeah, I'm covered everything, and we have some pending comments, but those comments we will revise it.
Fair enough.
It's more of technical comments.
So, Mr. Chairman, I guess from a technical standpoint, any technical comments regarding, for example, stormwater and the like, the applicants indicating that they will comply with those comments to the extent that there may still be sufficiencies. But I think the applicant has made significant progress in addressing many of those comments.
Why don't we go to our professionals and see what they want to say?
Fair enough.
Nicole, Ms. Shapiro.
Mr. Chairman, there was one additional comment under site plan that I had added. It was a comment made by Jonathan Blank from my office after our meeting in July, where we wanted you to widen within that dedicated dedication, or the right-of-way dedication, we wanted you to widen the extra 2 feet along Marlborough Road on your side of the property. I just want to make sure that you did see that comment because it came late today.
Is that the sidewalk you're talking about?
No, there's 2 feet of roadway
roadway, yes.
widening that we were looking to do on Marlborough Road within that right-of-way dedication. Okay, there was also, from my recollection, when I had looked at the site plan, we had talked about the bus stop that was on Route 18, and we had talked about connecting or providing pedestrian access from that bus stop into your site. The way the line work was oriented, it actually almost dead end at a utility pole. And then you carried your retaining wall around and what looked like a chain link fence mounted on the retaining wall. One of our prior comments was that we wanted you to put guide rail in certain areas, specifically in areas that run parallel or perpendicular to the travel way or to where vehicles are. Now, where that sidewalk along where that bus stop is, if you look at the grades, you can pull back that retaining wall and just connect directly into your sidewalk that exists along that. I think it's the northern edge of that access to Route 18 from your site.
You're correct. We will revise it, and also we have to modify our DOT permit. We have an NJ DOT major access permit is pending.
Okay.
So we have to ask also their permission because we will be putting the sidewalk in their property.
Yes, because there was also a note that indicated that the sidewalk will be designed by others. I just want to state for the record that the others in this scenario would be you. And then that the construction costs and the design would be borne by the applicant, and that any permitting fee would be borne by the applicant. And to assist in the application, the township is willing to be the applicant on it if you want to bifurcate it from your application that you currently have in.
Nicole, just so I'm clear, so in your memorandum on page 17 under site plan comments, we're talking about comments, I guess it's E and F regarding the chain link fence and the retaining wall, correct?
Yes, so the recommendation was, we want something for fall protection where the retaining wall exists.
Right.
When the retaining wall is up against, let's say, the patio, the outdoor patio area, you could put the fence there. But when you get to sort of the edge of the northern parking area, it actually, if you look at the top of the grade of the wall and you look at the parking lot, and the grades, actually, I forgot to make this comment, the proposed grades were missing in that corner. But from the previous plans that I had, you could drive right off of that parking lot and you can go right into that low point that exists off there. That's why we were recommending a guide rail in that location. In the entrance or the access from Route 18 into the site, again, you have the retaining wall and you have the fencing right on top of it. Now, aesthetically, I'm not sure how nice that looks, but regardless, you are now almost just at grade with your sidewalk. Now, if a car was to be errant and get over that curb line, you could now then have that car then travel into the ditch that's on either side of those driveways. So I was saying, and aesthetically, it's probably a little bit better if you put guide rail in that location.
That's a good suggestion, and thanks for finding it out.
Okay.
We'll correct our maps and update our NJ DOT access permit, showing all the details, because they
Okay.
will be also reviewing the same plan.
So that was E and F on the fencing / guide rail comment. And then there was letter L referred to the pavement, the 2-foot pavement widening along Marlborough Road. And there was the extra, I think there was that extra, where is that? There was that comment that I had made on the bus stop where, that's F under traffic and circulation, letter F on page 19, where I talk about the sidewalk to be designed by other and how you could pull back that retaining wall on that side, and then you don't have that conflict with the utility pole. Also, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, there was one more thing. It's unclear, I know, Shri, when we met, you were saying you were going to try and save all those mature trees up against the residential, and you were going to supplement with plantings. When I look at your landscape plan, when I look at the site plan, I see that proposed tree line being cut back, and I see that you are saving, but then I flip to the landscape, and it's heavily landscaped right up into the property line. So it doesn't look like you're saving anything. For me, I would turn on the existing trees on the landscape plan, show what's being saved, and cross out what's being removed.
Yeah, we'll highlight it.
Okay.
It's there, but I'll highlight it. It's just basically, you can see the different symbol.
Okay. For the board's information, I just want, there is probably about 30 to 40 stormwater comments that have to be reviewed in detail. Obviously, you saw that the memo came today, and it was a bit late for us to go through that. That is my fault. I wanted to take certain care in going through all those comments. Should the board act favorably, Shri and I and Jonathan Blank from my office have talked about that stormwater in great detail, and we feel confident that we could meet the requirements for NJDEP and our stormwater management ordinance for town. So should the board look favorably, that will be reviewed, but at this time, we haven't done a second review.
Just a couple of things I want for the board's knowledge anyway. And you spoke, as to your memo, that would be page 3 on traffic and circulation, number 3 on page 18. And there was an agreement, correct? I'm sorry, page 17. There was an agreement for the retaining, for the guide rails as to E and F, correct? I don't think they're picking it up. It's a directional mic. Yeah, so you're gonna have to speak this way.
Yeah.
Right, and I don't think they were getting that. So is that true? There was
Yes,
a-
the applicant's going to,
Thanks,
Nicole was recommending under E and F regarding the guide rails and the modifications to the retaining walls, and the applicant will comply with that.
Thank you, Mr. Himmelman. And as to number 3 on page 18 and then following on 19, there's an agreement on letter F, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted the board to understand that. I would also comment that I know the memos came out a little late. The board didn't really get a chance to see all this. Would there be, you're going to work closely with them, so can there be an assurance given on the record that should the board act favorably, all this is going to be taken care of? We have not had a chance to really go through the depth of this, and I don't want to hold it up, but at the same time.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
I want is for the board to have that.
I will
assurance.
represent to the board and to staff that, and Nicole highlighted this on the stormwater. We will work with staff and resolving all the stormwater comments. I think Nicole's point was, I think we can achieve compliance for NJDEP stormwater management regulations, and that's really the critical point for Nicole's office. And I know Shri will work on that. But in deference to Nicole, there's a lot of information here, and she needs time to review that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, also be reassured that they have a freshwater wetlands general permit into DEP. That, once they put that into DEP, they review for stormwater management as
Correct.
well. For them to get a permit to do what they're doing out there from DEP, they need to comply with stormwater management. So it's almost like a double review.
And Mr. Chairman, should the board act favorably, it would be conditioned on getting all outside agency approvals, including a major DOT access, freshwater wetlands, whatever, County of Middlesex, et cetera, but you know that.
The State Highway front, yeah. Mr. Dasty, anything you want to add to that, or is it to your satisfaction?
I'm taking notes, Mr. Chairman. I got it, and I make sure that the board acts.
Thank you, Mr. Dasty. Mr. Hillman, I'm sorry, I interrupted.
Yes.
Go right ahead.
Nicole,
Nicole, you were done? Mr. One?
Good evening, board members. I just want to begin by saying I was on vacation when the application was scheduled the first time, and so we had found out the application for planning review. This time I was able to take a close look and there were some comments which I thought were irrelevant at this point, and so you see the strike through some of the comments that were addressed by the applicant. I was involved in all the meetings with the applicant. I did have numerous calls with Shri to understand what happened. I have read the transcripts as well. So, couple of things I want to bring up. One is parking, and I just wanted to know, Shri, are you going to answer questions on parking?
The parking is, like, township code does not have specific.
Correct.
Like a guidance for this particular use. So the applicant will talk about it, their actual, what's their need for the
Right.
parking. We have provided 35 parking spaces, actually 32 and 3 for the vans.
Correct.
So-
And I bring it up. I bring it up only because I went through your transcripts at the last meeting. You had presented that the township code requires one space for every 600. However, that requirement is actually, it pertains to child daycares and not adult daycares. Not that I have any concerns about the parking, and Brian will agree with me on that. But it's just that I wanted you to add testimony on record to just convince the board that there will be ample parking. Again, remember, the patrons of this facility are bused into this facility, and so most of the parking required is actually for employees than the patrons. So please keep that in mind. But Shri, will you give details about it, or is it going to be the owner?
For the use, applicant will talk about it.
Sure.
How many number of employees they have and how many visitors they are expecting during their daytime visits. So he will be talking about, but we have ample parking space because based on my discussion with him, like we have a 32 parking spaces, and he said we never use that many parking spaces, and there are other similar facilities in Old Bridge Township.
Sure.
Also, Vina, if I could just interrupt. So we do have our traffic consultant, and he's going to testify on, obviously, on the parking issues and his traffic letter report, which I think you had a separate review done by your outside consultant. The applicant did testify at the last meeting as to the number of employees and the shifts that generally has 3 shifts, and that the clients are generally bused to the facility. Our traffic engineer actually did, at your suggestion, went to their current facility here in Old Bridge and monitored and reviewed their current operation. So I think that'll get the board a good sense
Definitely.
of the parking need on a day-to-day basis. As you know, the plans revised now show 35 spaces, and there is parking also for 3 buses, correct?
3. Not
So
buses, but they're kind of like it's a van.
it's a van, right? And we have pictures to show that as well. So I think we'll be able to put on ample testimony on the parking and traffic need, as you suggested, through our traffic consultant.
Sure. So then, board members, if you look at the zoning requirements, I won't go through each, but I just had to make certain tweaks because this property is unique. It has a frontage along 3 sides. The code states that the side that is opposite, the smallest side, the side that is opposite to it is the rear yard. And so the side of the property which abuts the residences is actually the rear yard, and all 3 remaining sides are the front yard. And so there is no side yard requirement for this project. I have changed the setbacks based on the right-of-way dedication. So you'll notice along Marlborough Road, the setback has changed. The landscape ratio also is impacted because of the right-of-way dedication. However, it complies with the township's code and does not require a variance. The front yard along Marlborough Road definitely requires a variance. And then moving along, the sign setback, I just wanted to bring it to your attention, Shri, that the proposed sign is within the right-of-way dedication. So you would have to relocate that sign and move it away. The ordinance requires that it's 20 feet from the edge of pavement, and 10 feet from the right-of-way. So you wouldn't have to move the sign. I don't know if there is a location where you can avoid a variance. You may still need a variance looking at that.
We would be able to move it.
Okay, so that was one. Um, There was discussion about an island in front of the entrance where you have the canopy, and you've seen I've added an image there showing maybe that's what you need to do to have better circulation, and I hope you agree with that.
Yes, we agree.
Um, the signage for electric vehicle charging station, you need to submit that to the planning office so that I can review and ensure that it's compliant with the township's code. So one of the things, board members, we discussed is originally the outdoor patio area was on Marlborough Road side, and it encroached into the buffers. And we thought that it was best to locate it on the side without affecting the buffer area, so that we don't compromise on the required buffers, but then there is some sort of privacy. So that was one of the changes, and that's when the building footprint changed, we were able to create that trapezoidal space there where people could have outdoor dining, outdoor patio area. Outdoor dining is in my head. I'm sorry. And then I talked about the sign. The refuse area, I know the previous report, there was a suggestion that it should be relocated, but when we met with the applicant, we thought it was best to keep it the way it is, because the other alternative would be to move it closer to the residences, and you don't want the refuse to smell or be an issue, so we thought it was best to leave it the way it is.
Did that go by the fire marshal too, as well?
Jim, looking at the plans, it is where it was. They just put islands on each side to keep the parked cars away from, in case there is a fire, there won't be a car problem.
And it's satisfactory with
Yes,
you because
that's-
I remember you talking about it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
There was a comment in the memo about the lighting pole, and it was a last minute discussion Shri and I had. The light pole height is 14.5 feet, so it does comply, and they do not need a waiver on that. Landscaping, I think they've done a real good job in terms of providing screening and planting evergreen trees. There was one, I think they comply with most of the requirements of the township. There was one added comment that try using New Jersey native species, and Shri has agreed to work with us to replace those trees with native species. So I think that's all. The last comment I have is pertaining to architecture, but I will, of the building, but I'll hold off till I speak to the,
Conservation officer have to be involved in the landscaping at all?
pardon me?
The conservation officer, I know,
They would have to, because I know he had made some comments, so we typically say that the applicant should work with the planning office and the conservation officer to come up with a plan that is acceptable to both. And that should be a condition of approval should the board act favorably.
And Mr. Chairman, that's absolutely acceptable. And as I indicated, our engineer met with Mr. Lavallo at the site, and we will be revising the landscaping plan, and also to address some of Nicole's comments, which indicating which trees are remaining, which will be leaving, and clearly delineating the new vegetation and trees, et cetera. So I think it's clear on the plan.
thank you, Mr. Himmelman.
Sure.
Mr. Wyatt?
That's all on my end.
Mr. Praska?
Good evening.
Then I'm going to go back to you, Fire Marshal, after Mr. Praska.
We did issue a letter September 28th stated. I also was unfortunately had a conflict last week.
I don't know if your mic's on,
You got me?
a little closer.
How about now?
Yeah, there you go.
Great. I was also had a conflict at the last meeting, so I was unable to attend. So we do have a few comments that I'd like to go through in our letter, but I think the first question or clarification, the access to Marlborough Road, is that is it envisioned to be full access? It looks like you have an island on that
It's a full
driveway.
access. It's going to be depressed island, like depressed curb.
Okay.
Do you
So-
want to wait, Mr. Hillman, till you having a traffic engineer come up?
We do.
Yeah, I just thought if you wanted to, anything that was said so far.
Sure, I just wanted to clarify that that would be a mountable island on that, and, you know, we would just defer to the fire marshal and make sure the design of that is acceptable to him.
Mr. Chairman, we have gone through his traffic memorandum, and I think our traffic consultant's going to go through all the comments.
That's what I thought we'd wait. I just wanted to see if there was anything that had come up so far that.
Fair enough.
you wanted to talk about, Mr. President.
I can defer, I can just defer until the traffic if you'd like me to do
Would you
that.
prefer to do that so you can let your witness testify first?
I think that makes sense.
That's fine.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Sure.
Fire Marshal, anything as to what's been said so
The
far?
last review letter, I think you just had some typos on the plan.
Yes.
You were calling the hydrant the
store's
FEC, and we'll just correct all that.
Yes,
Okay.
we'll do that.
Other than that, Jim, everything else was fine.
So you can assert to the board that you're satisfied with the plan for the circulation of your trucks and.
Yeah, with the mountable islands, and then the dumpster being surrounded by islands, and and cutting back the canopy. So yes, I have no problem with the way we can get in and out.
Thank you, Fire Marshal.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, so Mr. Hart did issue an updated memorandum dated September 28th, and he's correct that we will modify the typo when it comes to the fire hydrant on the plans. And he did indicate that the fire lane striping is satisfactory, but he'd like to have final approval of the striping. And then he also noted that all his concerns from the May 25th, 2022 memorandum have been addressed.
The board has been notified by copy of the same. Thank you.
Terrific.
Board members, before you go to your next witness, let me see if the board members have any questions of the engineer.
Just one question, sir.
Scogno.
So it's my understanding that you offer transportation to and from the facility, is that correct?
Correct.
And would anyone get off at that bus stop and then take the sidewalk to the facility?
Unlikely, from my understanding.
Okay, so Nicole, we're doing that sidewalk to the bus stop.
Well, if.
So they're
people-
doing it.
If people work at the facility, they can certainly take the bus, get off the bus, and then walk into the facility because they work there. They might not be patrons of the facility, they might be workers within the facility. So we always trying to make sure that we provide multimodal connectivity within town, walking, biking, access to mass transit. It could also be that residents that live, let's say, on Veronica, want to walk down Marlboro Lane instead of walking down to that skewed intersection. They now have almost a cut-through that they could do right through that parking lot and then to that bus stop, which would actually save them time.
Yeah, I was just thinking of the individual that comes to the facility, he has to show his identification, and then he gets charged for whatever he's doing, whether it's going to the doctors or using the transportation. And if he happens to take the public transportation, but he's being also charged as he's coming in for that transportation.
Yeah, but I don't think that that's the model that they're presenting. I think.
Mr.
all-
I would agree with
Yeah,
Nicole.
my recollection was that all the people that will be using the facility are bussed in. And that was one of the comments about, would there be enough parking? There's no in and out, and my recollection was from the applicant that in order to come, you have to have an appointment. So if it was a relative or maybe the caretaker of that person, they just can't show up. So that would be planned. So the parking would kind of be set by shift work, when the employees would come and go, and people aren't just allowed to come and walk in. I think you need an appointment, and every participant gets bussed in
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
and then bussed out. So no one can go on their own to the facility without an appointment.
Correct. And I think for the sidewalk issue, when we met with staff, I think it's a connectivity issue. It's not necessarily for the patrons. There may be, as Nicole indicated, there may be people from the residential areas behind who would want to have access to the bus stop. And obviously, it's safer to have on sidewalk on frontage. And also, if there are workers or others who may be coming to the facility, they would have that option to take public transportation, although it's probably limited, but the applicant has no objection to what the engineer's office is recommending.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Scogno?
No, thank you.
Mr. Stone or anything? Mr. Connor? Ms. Testaverde? Ms. Andrews? Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
thank you.
Hillman.
Our next witness we're going to call is our architect, Saran Pathak, and he is the applicant's architect, and he did not testify at the last meeting, so we would have to have him sworn in and qualified.
Sure, I'm sure Mr. Dasty will take care of that.
Give him a minute to settle in here.
Thank you, sir. Can you got
Your mic. Yeah. Thanks for your time.
holding off in there. Right.
It's directional.
There you go. Do you swear to testify truth in this matter before the board, sir?
I do.
And can we have your name, sir?
First name Sorin, Saurin. Last name Pathak, starts with P as in Peter, Athak.
Mr. Patak, if you would just give a brief background of your professional experience and educational experience, background, and I know you've been testifying before numerous planning and zoning boards throughout the state, but we technically need to qualify you as an expert in the field of architecture. Thank you.
Sure thing. So I'm licensed in New York, New Jersey, and Ohio state. Licensed since early 2000, and been part of the many zoning board and planning board throughout the state of New Jersey. I've served on the zoning board of Parsippany.
And his license is current in this state, correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
We accept his expertise.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you would, now I know you brought some exhibits with you this evening. Are there any exhibits that we have not submitted as part of the application that you would like to have marked? Or is everything as filed with the caveat that there may be a colored rendering that you may not have filed, correct?
That's correct.
All right. Why don't you identify what you'd like to discuss this evening, and to the extent it needs to be marked, we can do so. Oh, just grab that site plan. You can move
Gentlemen,
that.
do you know what we're up to on exhibits?
Yeah, I don't think,
I believe this is going to be A2, sir. A1
I
was
think
the
there was
land-
only one marked,
Okay.
but it would be in the transcript.
A1 was the land use plan. This will be A2. sir.
Right, correct. Yeah, if you would mark that.
Nice car.
Natalie, we don't have any stickers or anything. Oh, you, okay, yep. Tough for lawyers. Thank you, Dad. Why don't you just put that on, and you could initial that and date it, and put it's A2, pen. Okay, very good. Why don't you just identify that for the record, and then we can get into your architectural drawings.
It's a color rendering of the building from one of the corner of the property, and just shows the the outside material and the view of the building.
Very good, okay. It's my understanding that you have prepared architectural plans in connection with this application, correct?
That's correct.
And what I'd like to do is if you could go through and describe the elevations and your architectural plans, and also focusing on the floor plan and of the proposed building, and also the various components to that floor plan, if you would. Thank you. Natalie, are you going to be able to put that up for the board members if the architectural plan? Sure. If you would, Sabrina, if you would just identify for us the sheet of your plan that you're going to discuss.
The sheet I have on the easel is A001.
Very good, thank you. If you would describe for us what this sheet is and what it depicts and how it relates to the plan, thank you.
So this is the first floor plan for the building. This is a single-story building, the size of which was explained by the engineer. Sort of a trapezoid shape building, has a multiple of entrances to the facility, just because of the way the shape of the building has landed us. And it meets the New Jersey Administrative Code requirement for the physical plant requirement for this adult daycare center. And it requires certain spaces, which is delineated in the plan.
And if you would just describe for us some of the details of the aspects of the plan and just the overview, just the rooms and how the operation works internally.
Yeah, so the facility mainly has a large, taller ceiling height area called activity area, which is where most of the patrons would congregate, during the course of the stay in the facility. And then you see the smaller boxes on the side, which are mostly the support staff and the activity director. There's bunch of nursing staff, and also we have 2 large rooms at the corner, which are, we call it a quiet room, which is for intended to be the patron to rest, if they not choose to be part of the main activity area.
And you agree with the earlier statement that the building has been reduced in size, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and for the record, that is how many square feet?
So that's delineated on this civil engineering plan, but what it has landed us is, we, in our calculation, it has reduced the occupancy to 175.
Very good, okay. Now, I understand you've also brought with you some samples of some of the building facades.
Yeah, we have, so again, back to the architecture, we've decided to make only a 1-story building, which sort of gels into the neighborhood. The building is not so tall. It blends into the overall scheme of the area. The building is generally smaller than the residential structure surrounding it. And, we have tried to put an attractive building using certain building materials.
And just for the record, I guess, your architectural plans, I guess sheet A000 would be a layout of what it'll appear as you're describing, correct?
That's correct. So it's a flat roof building. You could see various views. We're using a Japanese Nichiha panel, which is fiber cement board panels. Just simple, windows, nothing too fancy. And it has 2 skylights in the middle of the activity rooms.
Mr. Chairman, we did bring some samples of the materials. I'm not sure whether the board is interested in reviewing those, but we do have them available, which supports what the architect is indicating. Do you have anything else you would like to add about your testimony relative to the plans that you filed and any of the descriptions you've laid out?
No additional comment.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we don't have any further direct questions of the architect, but would open up to board questions
Start
and
at
staff.
the end again, Mr.
I just want to see if, are they small samples?
Yes. Want to see them?
You knew the women were going to ask to see them.
My wife told me never to respond to that.
She's a smart woman, right?
She's also a lawyer.
That's dangerous.
Mr. Chairman, one, with the samples, that was my only comment. I just was curious to see the sample. I think Vina's going to take on more of the architectural comments. So is it a mixture of, is that the color scheme, and then there's a mixture of the facade would be?
Yeah, so we'll generally keep the majority of the exterior of the facade into neutral tone, which is the white and the gray. And at some places, we'll just break it apart because of the length of the building. We need to do a little bit of
A variation.
variations.
Okay, I'm going to let Vina go on this one.
So, board members, like I said, I jumped into the review much later, but I did notice the elevations today, and I did have some comments because there is a style we have been following in the town. Some bit of stone at the base, different planes within the facade so that the facade doesn't look as plain. When I look at the windows, I feel that it needs some sort of treatment to make it look nicer. Right across the street, on the other side of the highway, the planning board approved a retail building 2 years back, and the elevations were really well done, and we would want to mimic, or we would want to see some identical features in the building, so because we're really working hard to make buildings look attractive in the town. I think I would want that opportunity, should the board act favorably, to work with the architect and come up with a color scheme, building materials that are in sync with what we have been doing in the past.
Mr. Chairman, that's a valid comment, and the applicant has no objection to that. Do you have any concern with that?
Absolutely no. I think, although, I think our efforts were to sort of not make too impressive of the building in this neighborhood, just knowing that there's residential structure around
I think
it.
they'll be proud of the building if it looks nicer. I disagree with that because, and I understand the simplicity. It's just that it's along the highway. It's along a commercial corridor. We want it to be nicer so that when people enter Old Bridge from East Brunswick, they're like, wow.
Of course.
Anything else?
That's it. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Roscoe, anything? I didn't think the fire marshal had any issue. I'll go to the members on my left. Is there any other comments you're going to make?
No.
First? Okay. Jim? Roseanne? Sure, by all means, go right ahead.
I agree with what Ben said. I think I'm the only adult who would be using that facility at this board. I'd like to see it, and I love Japanese-inspired, but I think a little bit more pizzazz. When an adult is coming into something, just because they're a little bit older, they still haven't lost their sense of style. That's all.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we have two
you.
large
Ms. Testa,
skylights on this.
Good.
A very large skylights in the middle of those activity areas, which is, we're using very, it's a subdued light comes in. Imagine just this room, and we have a large skylight within this room. We're trying to create more experiential feeling inside the building, which is more paramount to the patrons.
The applicant will work closely with staff and come up with an appropriate architectural design that has a little more pizzazz, as they say.
That's great. Mr. Dasty, anything?
I do not have anything, sir.
Back to you, Mr. Hillman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think you're dismissed for the moment. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, our next witness is our traffic consultant from Dolan & Dolan, Doug Polynak, who is going to testify on the traffic aspects of the application. And just for the record, I guess we will have to have Doug sworn in and qualified. And thank you, Mr. Dasty.
Sir, do you have your microphone? Do you swear or affirm to testify truthfully in this matter before the board?
I do.
And can I have your name again, sir, please?
Sure. It's Douglas Poliniak, P-O-L-Y-N-I-A-K.
Good evening, Doug. Would you just give the board a brief overview of your educational background and professional qualifications? I know you've testified at many boards, probably too many to count tonight, so we can qualify as a traffic consultant. Thank you.
Yes, I am a graduate with a Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering from Lehigh University. I obtained that degree in 1998. Since that time, I've been working in the field of traffic engineering. I've been a licensed engineer in the state of New Jersey for approximately the last 18 years. I've testified before around 100 municipal planning and zoning boards within the state of New Jersey. And I've been in Old Bridge before, but it's been a long time, I don't recall which board it was. Before.
Thank you for presenting your credentials to us and those that would be watching at home. And we certainly accept your expertise.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just as a footnote, so Betsy Dolan, who's one of the founding partners, she was the traffic consultant on my first application,
going back
32 years ago. So in any event, Doug, I understand that your office did a traffic report, which is dated January 20th, 2022, which has been submitted as part of the application. You also had gone and reviewed the current operations, I believe, of our applicant client who happens to operate in Old Bridge, as you know. So what I would like you to do is sort of go through your recommendations and conclusions in your traffic report. And then we also have the memorandum from Environmental Resolutions, Inc., which the chairman was alluding to earlier, as well as the board's outside traffic consultant, and we could address those comments. So I will turn the presentation over to you at this point. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. As Mr. Himmelman said, our office prepared a traffic impact statement dated January 20th of this year to review the traffic and parking characteristics of the proposed adult daycare facility. From an overall traffic engineering and impact perspective, this is a pretty light case with respect to how much traffic will be generated at the site driveways during the peak hours. As was discussed during operations testimony at the last hearing, the site operates primarily with visitors being bused or vanned to the subject property. Employees will drive their own vehicles. No visitors, or if any, as I observed also, arrive in personal vehicles. There's approximately 20 to 27 staff at the facility that operates in shifts that begin at about 8:30 in the morning, and then there's a shift turnover at about 2, and then the site closes at about 7 p.m. Staff arrives in their own vehicles, prior to opening at about 8:30, and leaves after 7. With about 20 to 30 staff members entering via Marlborough Road as well as Route 18, you're going to have traffic dispersed between 2 driveways. Very light traffic generator, as I said. We looked at, because there's not necessarily an identical match in the Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation manual, in our report, we looked at a cultural center as something close to what this would be for 120 attendees. I believe Mr. Proska also looked at this as a assisted living facility with 120 beds, because there's just nothing that necessarily matches. But both of those land uses come up with about 20 to 30 peak hour trips, which matches the employee count. Now, to supplement that, I personally went to the site that exists over on, and I hope I don't butcher the name of the road, Giacomo Boulevard, I hope. And I went there earlier in about mid-September, and I observed the morning peak hour and the midday shift change, because those are when the site would be at its busiest. And as it turns out, I counted the vehicles into and out of the site during the morning hour and during that midday shift change, and it matched the IT data of about 20 total trips during both of those hours. So between the 2 IT land uses and actual counts at the existing facility, they all seem to jive and demonstrate that there's be about 20 to 30 trips in an hour. The Institute of Transportation Engineers and NJDOT both consider 100 trips in an hour as a significant increase. Typically, if a site was going to do 100 peak hour trips, it may have impacts to the surrounding roadway network. With this site doing about 25 trips, it's about a quarter of that volume, demonstrating the limited impact of the site. And lastly, just for a comparison, the site was previously approved for a medical office back in 2007. Obviously, it never went forward. And a medical office of the size that was proposed would generate about 30 to 35 peak hour trips, slightly higher than what's anticipated here, but more traffic continually throughout the day. So as I said, this development is a light trip generator that should have no impacts to the surrounding neighborhood with respect to traffic. I also reviewed the site plan design as well. As I said, access will be via Route 18 as well as Marlborough Road. We currently have a NJDOT access application before DOT under their review. Typically takes them about 90 days to review an application. We're around 60 days into that review, so I would expect some comments from them on their review with about a month or so. To speak to the sidewalk, if we receive some comments from DOT on our next plan revision submission to DOT, we could add any changes and it could be part of our application. 35 parking spaces are proposed on site. That includes 3 larger spaces for those vans and buses. 25 would be required by ordinance if in fact this was a child daycare center. But as we heard earlier, it is not, and there isn't necessarily a requirement. But in addition to those, traffic volume counts, I also monitored the parking that took place on the site. And during my observations, I found that a maximum parking demand was about 15 vehicles during that shift change. And some of those vehicles were buses and vans that were dropping off or picking up during that midday shift. So with about 15 vehicles parked on the existing operations, there's more than substantial room for a factor of safety at this site. If there's an increase in population, I think the 35 parking spaces will be more than sufficient for the operations of the site. The parking spaces will be designed 9 by 18 feet. I believe the requirement is 10 by 20, but the ITE does allow for 9 by 18 parking spaces for sites that generally have low turnover into and out of the parking spaces. And for this site, you're basically going to have your employees coming in the morning, staying there till either the midday shift or till the end of the day. So 9 by 18 is certainly a fair standard for this type of use. So overall, just to summarize, I don't think there'll be any substantial traffic impacts associated with this development. And overall, the site with respect to parking, aisle width, and stall size meets your typical engineering design standards.
Doug, if I could thank you for your testimony. If I could just follow up with a few questions from Brian's memorandum.
Sure.
So we've talked about the sidewalk across the site frontages, correct?
Yes.
And I think the staff's looking for some connectivity, and we have no issue with that, correct?
No.
Okay. With regard to the electric vehicle charging stations, if you could just, I know it's more site plan related, but I think if you could address that also.
Yes, the site has been designed to provide a station that will serve 2 of the parking spaces on site. And, based on the statute, I believe we're required to comply with any additional make-ready spaces.
Correct. Now, I know you discussed the design parking for any bus and/or van parking. So you're comfortable with I think it's the one large parking area on the plan, correct?
Yes. In fact, in my observations, at times there were 3 larger vehicles parked on site, so it'll be good to have those outside of a standard parking stall. I would like to say that I think from an overall operations aspect, the site is going to work great. My observations at the other site was that it worked well, but I think by having the larger vehicles and the drop-off will make for a much more efficient operation.
Thank you. Now, in terms of deliveries and whether we need an area for a specific loading zone, can you discuss that? Because I think the applicant did describe from an operational standpoint that item, correct?
Yes, there will be no tractor trailer deliveries that take place at this property. I believe there were some food deliveries. I took notes at the last meeting, milk and eggs and fruit about once a week, and more of a standard box truck, paper goods maybe once a month. And then, of course, you have Amazon or FedEx, all of which can either fit in a standard parking spot or use the larger spaces.
So it's your, I guess, your professional opinion that given the nature of this operation, we don't necessarily need a specific loading zone area, correct?
Yeah, I don't believe it's necessary for this site.
All right. There were, I think those covered the parking and loading comments in Brian's memo, but he did have several comments regarding the site plan, some of which we've now addressed. Is there anything on that? And I'm referring to his memorandum on page 4. I think it's under site plan comments, items 16 through 23. Are there any comments there you would like to address that we didn't already cover?
Based on discussions with the project team, I don't think there's any issues with those. I would ask that the site engineer, Sri, if there's anything in there that we can't address on the site, you just comment. But I think we could take care of most, if not all, of those items.
Very good. Doug, would you like to add anything, or do you think you've covered all the bases on this?
I think it's going to be a great site. I don't think anyone's going to notice any traffic at all at this site. I think the NJDOT will do their job and review the site to make sure that the driveway is designed appropriately. There's a shoulder out there for deceleration into and acceleration out of the site, and I think it'll work very well.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Chairman, I don't have any further direct questions of our traffic consultant, but the board might, or you, or staff, or obviously Brian.
Thank you. Let's see if Mr. Praska agrees.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I agree with Mr. Pliniak's testimony regarding the trip generation for this type of site. It's a pretty low intensity, but again, there is no empirical data nationally available for these types of uses. So we looked at a couple different uses. They were comparable to what Mr. Pliniak used in his traffic study, but indeed, the best data would be going to look at an existing facility, which they did, and that concurs with the findings in their study. We did have a few comments that I believe most of them were addressed in testimony, but a few clarifications for the make-ready parking spaces. Is the electric charging station going to be installed, or just the conduit for those two?
I believe, based on my review of the plan, that there is one shown. I would ask for clarification from our engineer, but I think it's shown as a space with the ability for 2 parking stalls. They're by the larger parking spaces.
I believe that's correct.
Can
Shri,
you put
wanna
the site plan?
clarify that?
It's along 18, I believe.
Correct.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that they'll get the actual charging station will be installed, not just the conduit.
Is that
Oh,
right?
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
for
sorry, I
spaces,
apologize.
That's okay.
Okay.
Two spaces. Yeah, it's up near the 3 larger spaces.
Okay, great. And you might have mentioned this, but I was having a conversation with Vina. Bicycle parking for employees, is that being provided?
I don't think it's shown, but I think we could do that.
Okay. Okay, great. I believe you touched on most of the other comments. The one comment in there about the loading was specific to how the vans work with the lift and the ramps and the ability for them to come down for mobility access for some of the patrons. So the suggestion is to widen that sidewalk in front of the portico share to 8 feet to allow those lifts and ramps to access. But it sounds like that's something that
We
it's
did
amenable to.
We did review that comment on the additional 2 feet, I believe, for the sidewalk, and the applicant has no issue with that.
Okay, great. And sounds like site plan comments are all, we can work those out and we'll comply.
Yes.
One of the comments was there's a lot of striping in the portico share area, and the recommendation was to reduce the maintenance of that, to consider a decorative pavement treatment for that area.
Correct. I think we'll comply with all those, yes.
Great. I think that's everything.
Okay. Thank you, Brian.
I think Vina might have a comment.
I'm going to go to, I just want to have a question when the word think. comes
We will
up,
comply.
That
Thank you, Mr.
leaves it
Chairman.
open-ended to me anyway.
No, we will comply. I think
There will
Doug-
be an agreement as to the items that were written on Mr. Praska's report that you will come to terms with, correct?
Correct, and I think there was some overlap with
Yes.
the other memo, but yes,
I
we will
understand.
comply, yes.
Ms. Shapiro?
Just the island that's at that exit or the driveway on Marlborough Road, the shape of the island sort of makes it or alludes to a right in, right out. I mean, I don't know, but again, I know that the testimony was that it was going to be mountable, but when Brian and I looked at the detail, it's not mountable on the detail. So although it does say Shri, it does say mountable, it's not mountable on the detail.
You're going to have to come forward, yeah.
You're gonna have to come forward, yeah. No,
No.
take the mic. Yeah, just grab the mic, because you'll just identify yourself for the record also.
Signage P and working as an engineer for the applicant. It will be a depressed island. Like a
Okay,
car will
but-
be depressed, like a flush with the.
But I think what I'm saying is perhaps we could change the shape of it, maybe make it an oblong instead of sort of a triangular.
No, definitely.
you know.
We'll make it so it's easier, no confusion left for the
Okay.
drivers.
And then I'm just curious, when prior to your submission for your application for the access permit, did you have a pre-application meeting with DOT?
No, we did not. This
Okay.
level of permitting generally doesn't require
Mhm.
a meeting with them, particularly because it's a right-in, right-out driveway on a divided highway. There's nothing difficult or unique with it. It's a pretty easy application.
I just wanted to see what their flavor would be because it's like the egress on the way out on 18, it's very close to that utility pole, the curb return. So I'm just curious as to if they would make you shift it over a bit to avoid any relocation. I didn't know.
It's possible.
Okay.
I haven't reviewed the utility pole location, but that is a comment that DOT sometimes does make for a review. So
Yep.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's too close for them if they ask for the pole to move or the driveway radius to change.
Okay, and I just want to make it clear that if the sidewalk becomes an issue as part of your current permit approval, if you wanted to bifurcate that application and have us come in separately, I'm happy to sign the application form.
Okay, that'd be great.
Thank you.
So what?
So, talking about the electric charging stations, right? I think the state's model requires 15% be make ready, right? And in terms of the use, you have these vans or minivans that come in to the facility. In future, you might want to switch to electric vehicles, and I think you should have that electric conduit in place so that in future, if you want to add electric charging stations for the van, you should be easily able to add it, and that's something you should seriously consider, because what's the type of traffic that is coming to this facility? Most of it is either employees or the patrons that are being bused. So the buses are critical. You can save your gas cost if you have electric charging station. And I know Mr. Bimani and I had talked about it when we met. So I think it's something you should consider, having electric conduits so that you plan for the future.
The applicant thinks that's a very good suggestion, and we would agree with that.
Fire Marshal, do you have anything? The island that they're talking about in the back of the return, does that have any effect on your trucks? Thank you. Board members to my left, Mr. Scogno.
Thank you very much. The employee parking, will that be signed? Or will they have signs on their spots, employee parking?
I don't believe that's necessary because that's really all who parks there.
What, you'll have an area just for the employees, you mean?
Employees are the only passenger vehicles that generally come to this facility. Like we said, the patrons or the visitors all are in buses or vans that
But
are
if I
provided for
would,
them.
if I would come to drop someone off,
That doesn't really happen.
you can't have that.
I don't know if you can have that, but I don't think I didn't witness one in my time at the site, and I believe prior testimony that it does not happen.
So if I had to come there for one reason or another to pick up my grandfather, where do I park?
I mean, I suppose if, in the stray time that something happens where someone could pull over and have to, to tie their shoe if they're driving. There's sufficient parking on this site for there to be employees, buses, and some stray parking spaces as well. I'm confident that there's more than sufficient parking to handle the demand of the site.
Okay, did you indicate that you're waiting for the DOT on the shoulder? In other words, if you're coming south on Route 18 to enter the facility, you would have to get over a little bit and then start to coast into the facility, not just straight get right in.
Northbound, by the way.
Yeah,
You come northbound.
correct.
Well, they're coming from
No southbound. It's
the north.
If you're heading
yeah.
north on 18,
Yeah.
Most drivers would use the shoulder to decelerate.
Is there a shoulder there?
Yeah, yes, there
There's
is.
a shoulder there.
Yes.
And the speed limit on Marlborough Road, do you know that?
Marlboro, I believe, is 25.
Right, exactly. A couple more things here. And in Old Bridge, we take care of our own leaves. You're going to have quite a bit of a job there. Thank you.
That's it, Mr. Scogno? Mr. Stoner, anything? Thank you, Mr. Connor. Sanders? Ms. Testaverde? Mr. Dasty?
No, sir.
Back to you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Doug, you're dismissed, but don't leave.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, our next witness is our professional planner, Justin Osiello, who will address the planning aspects of the application, including the variance relief sought. And we will have to have Mr. Osiello sworn in, and then we can have him qualified. Thank you.
Sir, how are you? Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to testify the truth in this matter before the board? I do. Can we have your name, please?
Justin Auciello, Auciello, licensed professional planner.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Osiello, if you would just briefly describe your educational background and your licensure as well in New Jersey, so we can have you qualified. Thank you.
Sure, I've been licensed in New Jersey since 2008. I have a master's in planning from Rutgers University. It was granted in 2005. My license is active and current. I have been on both sides of the planning fence, as on the public side and the private side. I've done everything from master planning to redevelopment and everything.
Mr. Osiello, thank you for doing that. For those who may be watching at home and aren't here live with us, you are familiar to us and all the board members. Obviously, we accept his expertise.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Mr. Osiello, so as you have had an opportunity to review this application, the staff has done a very good job delineating the requested relief, which, as you know, is a use variance, a D1 variance, as well as a variance for FAR. If you would describe for us the relief sought, identifying the, in your professional opinion, the standards for that relief, and I know you're going to present this sort of argument in the alternative, assuming that the board accepts the rationale that this is inherently beneficial.
Correct.
So if you would walk us through your analysis, and then we can open it up for questions. Thank you.
Sure, I think it might be helpful, just for the board's use, if I can just go through the letter that was dated today from the engineer and the planner, and that neatly lays out the variances that are required. I think I should just start with the use variance first, just because that's the major variance. Of course, the use variance is required on the R15 zone. This use is not listed as being permitted in the zone. Therefore, of course, a D1 use variance is required. That's listed on page 5 of your letter. Page 6 of the letter, which states that this facility is not permitted. Therefore, the variance is required. The FAR variance as well is required, D4. The FAR that's proposed is 0.218, whereas the max FAR is 0.19. And then, of course, there are some ancillary bulk variances that are listed on table 3 of the letter. I'm not going to go through them one by one. I'll talk about them later. Of course, they are subsumed into the D variance, the use variance, but of course, I think there's ample rationale for those variances. If I can start with the use variance, again, it's cleanly laid out in a narrative on the bottom of page 8 of the joint review letter. And of course, I'm sure as the board knows, there are certain proofs that must be put onto the record to sustain if the board so choose to grant this variance. The first is particular suitability. This is from the Medici case. And particular suitability is basically an analysis of what makes this particular site suited, particularly suited. I hate to use the word again in the definition. I think I was taught that in kindergarten, but there's really no other way of saying it. What is about this site that makes it well suited for this particular use? And I think there are a number of reasons why this is a use that's appropriate for the site. Number one, it's fairly benign. This is as you heard from all of the experts and also from the applicant, this is a highly controlled, lower impact use. People are brought to the site to utilize the services of the facility. It's highly controlled in the sense that, unlike other uses that you would see on Route 18, now granted, of course, this is the R15 zone, and not many uses other than residential are permitted by right. But given the nature of this use, it's relatively low impact, and I think that that's important from the perspective of its location on Route 18 and also near residential. I also think this site is uniquely suited to provide for a better alternative to the underlying zone. From a planning perspective, I probably wouldn't recommend to a client, if a client had come to me and said, hey, I want to build a nice house on this property. I don't think, we could disagree, but it's certainly probably not the best use for being on Route 18, a single family home. And I think what makes this use also unique is that the adult daycare use really has a residential feel. It's really akin to assisted living in many senses, although people, of course, are not living here, but for all intents and purposes, they're here throughout the course of the day. So I think in form and function, it's fairly similar. And actually, I would say that it is similar, but it's dissimilar in the sense that people are brought onto the site. The clients are bussed in, unlike assisted living or independent living. Of course, would be a higher impact use where people would have their own vehicles and would be coming and going. I'm certainly not a traffic engineer, but I think we can see that if there was more activity on the site, that would obviously have more impact. So I think on like the hierarchy of kind of residential style uses, adult daycare, I think really makes sense for this site. Also, the other reasoning for the particular suitability here is the easy access to the highway. Certainly one of the things that really popped out of my mind when I first got involved in this application is the closeness to the hospital. In the event there's some sort of medical issue, an ambulance can come to the site quickly and get the patient and go right to the hospital. So I think really those are also, I think, relative to the physical attributes of the site. Again, as you can see, it's oddly shaped. Given the configuration, the proposed configuration of the building and the overall site plan, I think it really works. This type of use and the way it's designed and also the way it functions with people being brought onto the site and really not needing all of the type of circulation that you would typically need for other commercial uses. I think the physical attributes of the site also work well for this type of use. So those are all of my justifications for the particular suitability. Relative to the special reasons, now inherently beneficial use is, I see it as such. I see that this use is one of the uses that should be, universally considered to be a public benefit. It's not codified in the state law like childcare and other uses are. However, other boards in the state of New Jersey, land use boards have found this to be inherently beneficial. I think it would be most prudent, however, to put in the Medici proofs, given that, of course, this hasn't been codified under state statute. So I think it would make more sense to kind of go through the Medici proofs, just so we can have a full record. So for the special reasons, I think the top special reason is criteria A of the MOUL. I think this is a use which certainly promotes the public health, safety, and general welfare. I think there is a need. I think the census data is clear, not just in Middlesex County, but in New Jersey and in the country as a whole, that the population is aging. This is a dense county. This is a dense township, and this is a use that is going to benefit a lot of people. So I think it's undisputed that this is certainly a use that will benefit the general welfare of the older population. I think relative to the physical attributes as discussed by the engineer and the other experts, I think what's proposed is providing for proper light, air, and open space. I think the applicant, and this is something that I'll talk more in the negative criteria, but I think relative to the buffering to the residential and preserving the existing tree line and then supplementing that, I think goes a long way, to the benefits of this application and the sensitivities of this application as it pertains to the residential and also Route 18. This is a highly visible application, so I think the applicant has. And also in working with the township and its professionals, has really made sure that this is going to be something that the township can be proud of. I think criteria G also, there's sufficient space allotted on this site to accommodate this use, and I think that's borne out by the dimensional requirements of the site as well. Criteria H, which speaks to the promotion of free flow of traffic. I think our traffic engineer, I think his testimony was very clear that this is a low traffic generating use, which makes it even better that, of course, the clients are bused onto the property. And also the visual environment is desirable. I think the architecture, I think the testimony of our architect was clear with that, and we're willing to work with the township and its professionals, to ensure that it's even more attractive than I think it already is. So those are the proofs for the special reasons or the positive criteria. Lastly, the last prong is a negative criteria, and of course, and it's a showing that if the proposal will present a substantial detriment to the public good, and if it would impair the intent of the zone plan, master plan, the zoning ordinance. I certainly think that when you're looking at whether a use is going to present a substantial detriment to the public good, you need to look at two primary things. You need to look at how the site is designed, how the building is designed, and how it orients with the surrounding area. I think number one, I think just from a pure usage standpoint, and at risk of repeating myself, but I think it's important in the terms of the negative criteria. I think, again, this is a lower impact use. This is on the scale of impacts of uses. I think this is at the lower end. The site obviously has been designed to appropriately site or house the use, for lack of a better word. And I think most importantly, given that this is in an R15 zone, and given that this site is adjacent to residential, keeping the existing buffering and then supplementing that, I think is another, reason why I think the applicant has taken strides to ensure that that any detriment certainly will not rise to the level of being substantial. Relative to any impairments to the zone plan and the zoning ordinance, I believe, of course, given this is not a use that is listed as permitted in the R15 zone. However, I feel that, through my testimony, I feel that the site obviously is appropriate for this use. I think that, adult daycare is a relatively newer use. Zoning ordinances haven't necessarily caught up with this type of use. But I think with that said, and to kind of reconcile this use not being listed as permitted, I think for all the reasons that I provided in my testimony, certainly will not rise to the level of being a substantial negative detriment to the zoning ordinance. Also, the master plan in the sustainability elements also lists that the need for older population care, and I think this is the type of use that certainly provides that. So looking at whether there's an impact to the master plan, I think it's consistent with what the master plan calls for. So I think for all of those reasons, I think the benefits of this use variance substantially outweigh any detriments to the public good. So that is the testimony for the use variance. For the bulk variances, of course, they're listed on, I'm sorry. Yeah, so I should go for the floor area ratio. Of course, a variance is required for that. The standard of proof for floor area ratio is a showing if the site can accommodate the problems that are associated with the floor area ratio, and that is strictly from case law. I don't necessarily agree with the word problems, because when you say problems, it has a connotation that there's some sort of problem that's associated with the proposed or any floor area ratio in any application. I think this is a unique situation in the fact, and you could say it that there's some sort of there's some level of hardship here. Of course, as stated on page 10 of the review letter, the applicant has revised a site plan to indicate the dedication on Marlborough Road and to accommodate the outdoor seating on the side of the building. The architectural plans were also amended to reduce the building footprint by approximately 1,000 feet to avoid any impact into the buffers. The proposed floor area ratio now complies with the R15 zone standards. However, with the right-of-way dedication discussed in detail further in this memo, the effective floor area ratio will be 0.21, which is slightly over the required of 0.19. A variance will be required, end quote. I think this is, of course, driven, as I had just read verbatim, driven by what's changed on the site plan from the original site plan. I believe the deviation of 0.02 is de minimis. I think that the site, with the improvements, and this is a better plan than the first iteration. I think for all those reasons, I think the problems associated with the proposed floor area ratio can certainly be met. So I covered the D1 variance, the D4 variance, and I would say, for the purpose of the record, to keep it clean, I think the negative criteria for the floor area ratio certainly doesn't rise to the level of being a substantial negative detriment and no impairment to the zone plan and the zoning ordinance with the proposed FAR. So those are the D variances. Relative to the C variances or the bulk variances, again, I think it's easy just to stick to the review letter because it's laid out very nicely. On page 6, minimum front yard setback on Marlborough Road, 40 feet is required, 29.86 feet is proposed. I think given the shape of the site, the frontage on 2 roadways, and the ability to and the need to create a building with enough square footage, but not just the building, all of the ancillary improvements, circulation, parking, buffering, et cetera. It's going to be, it would be, the applicant will be hard pressed to design a building that would fully meet the dimensional requirements of the principal building. So I certainly think for all of the reasons that I had stated in my testimony, the use variance, I certainly feel that despite the fact that we do need the variance for the minimum front yard setback, I think there will remain sufficient space, there will remain sufficient light, air, and open space. As well, I think there will still be a free flow of traffic. All of those special reasons, certainly that variance will not create a substantial negative detriment to the public good, and also not impair the intent of the zone plan, the zoning ordinance. Next variance is for the loading spaces. 1 is required, 0 is proposed. I think Doug, traffic engineer, gave ample testimony on why this type of use, unlike other types of uses, doesn't require a loading space given the lower generation and milk and eggs, what have you, coming onto the property. Doesn't really require a formal loading space for this type of use. Turning to page 7, again, this lists more bulk variances. The first one is the loading spaces I just discussed. For the signage, and excuse me, I don't know if David, I don't know if we, through the engineering testimony this evening, any changes were proposed for the signage package. I think there was some discussion earlier with Nicole about potentially moving a sign. Am I correct there?
Yeah, there's a possibility that we may be eliminating one of those variances, but we would work with staff on the signage setback requirements, and to the extent we need a variance, I guess we would technically have to seek that. But as the plans are now, I think we technically still need 2 variances.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah, I'll put the testimony in for 2.
Yeah.
No, but
So-
the sign was eliminated on 18, so the only sign is on Marlborough Road, so there is no variance.
Oh, okay, so we,
Right, it's Marlborough Road, it's 7.11 feet, I guess, Marlborough Road, and less than 10 feet on Route 18.
But I thought the sign on 18 was eliminated.
Yes, correct.
So there
So
is
the
no
one on
variance.
Marlborough Road would comply.
Yes, because you
Yeah.
could move it outside of the right-of-way dedication.
Oh, that's correct, Nicole, thank
Okay.
you. All right, so that
think
variance
Shri-
would be
I think
eliminated.
Shri testified that it will be moved out of the right-of-way dedication.
did.
And it will comply with the ordinance.
That's
So there
correct.
will be no variance.
okay, perfect. Yeah, that's what I thought. I just
Yes.
wasn't sure, and I didn't want to
Yep.
muddy the
Correct.
record. So
Thank you, Vina.
So no variances are required for the sign package. Then there are a few variances listed for the buffer. I think Shri had provided testimony about those variances. And again, those buffer variances are really driven, by the orientation, the shape of this site, and the need to develop, a building of suitable size to accommodate the use. And then, of course, all of the other, ancillary parking, circulation, landscaping, et cetera. There's really no way to avoid that. I would say that's really, on the most part, a C1 issue here. I would also just reiterate the fact that relative to the buffer to the residential, we are respecting that, keeping the existing trees and then supplementing that as well. Certainly, no substantial detriment to the public good, no negative impact to the zone plan and the zoning ordinance. And the refuse is being moved as well. So that variance is gone.
It still remains. The refuse area within the front yard is still a variance.
Okay, so
Within the, oh, I see, the front yard. Yes, Vina.
And with the signage going back, because it's a residential zone, no freestanding sign is permitted. So for that one sign, you would still need a variance for that one sign.
okay, thanks, Vina. I would say to that, this is a use on a highly visible location on Route 18. I think a modest sign is appropriate, just to identify the use and obviously for safety reasons, to be a beacon to drivers as they approach the site. I certainly think, given the location of the site, the sign's appropriate. Would advance purposes of zoning. I think there's sufficient space to accommodate that sign. Sign certainly will not present, in my opinion, a substantial detriment to the public good and not negatively impair the intent of the zone plan and the zoning ordinance. I believe, Vina, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, please, but I believe I covered all the variances.
Yes.
And I believe that's it. I guess in sum, I would say that certainly I think that this applicant has met the proofs for the use variance. I think there are substantial benefits here, with this application. I think it's going to really serve the public good, and I don't always feel great about applications that I work with clients on other types of uses, but I think this is the type of use that really kind of warms your heart, and it warms my heart as a planner, because I do have aging parents, and I think this is the type of use that could potentially serve them and their peers into the future. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Justin. I won't tell your father that, but in any event, I do respect your opinion, and I thank you for your outline of your testimony. Mr. Chairman, do you or any of the board members or staff have any questions?
Let's see what the professionals have to say. Ms. Shapiro,
I have nothing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Sawant.
Mr. Osceola, a couple of things, right? First, D1. So, and I'm not trying to quiz you, but just to help the board understand too, I know you mentioned that there is a hospital in near vicinity, and then you have residences, but also there are other uses, neighboring land uses that really support this type of use. And I'm sure you have studied them. You have the senior housing, Mayor Manor, which is right next door.
Right.
You have Reform Church, which is an assisted living facility, which is your immediate neighbor. So in terms of when you're justifying a D1 use variance, when it comes to land use patterns and consistency with land use patterns, do you agree that the proposed use is consistent with land use patterns within the neighborhood?
Yes, absolutely. I think this is a use that really fits with the patterns, and especially given those land uses that are so similar to this land use. So I would certainly agree.
The other is your D4, the floor area ratio variance, right? So when you are proposing a use that is not permitted in the residential zone, it's not kind of fair to compare the floor area ratio with the residential standards. So I'm sure you have looked at our zoning and seen what is, what type of zone exists along Route 9, Route 18. And if you notice, it's mostly EDO3 zone.
Right.
And have you studied the FAR and compared it with the proposed use, since you're proposing a non-residential use?
To be honest, I have not studied the relationship to the EDO zone, but if you could tell me what that
Yes.
standard is, then I could tell you back.
Yes, so board members are typically along our highways, we have the EDO3 zone, which allows a much higher FAR. So the EDO1 zone, which is not on the highways, allows 0.3, but the EDO3 zone, which is in the vicinity, allows 0.35. The proposed FAR is significantly less compared to what is allowed in the non-residential EDO3 zones along the highways. And then lastly, with the C variances that are being sought, would you agree that is kind of hardship because the lot is arch-shaped and has 3 frontages? Because even if you have to put in a building and comply with all the setback standards, you wouldn't be able to put a building in there.
I 100% agree. I think it would be impossible to develop any type of building that would be would have any use or utility.
Right. And lastly, with non-residential zoning along Route 15, right? If there was a commercial retail building, would you be able to put in a fully compliant building with all the parking, required parking at that location?
No, absolutely not.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm pretty sure Mr. Asiello was going to say all that had you given him a little bit more time.
Sure, yeah.
Mr. Praska?
Nothing, Mr. Chair.
No. Mr. Dasty?
Only question I was going to ask you is what applicants do you represent that don't warm your heart?
Say again?
That don't warm your heart.
Oh, no, I mean, what I meant that.
I hope you have no other clients here.
This
Justin.
is the
I'm
type of
just
use that I think is just very, I think near and dear to all of our hearts with older relatives.
I was almost going to tear up on that. Thank you. Mr. Fire Marshal, anything for Mr. Asiello? I'm going to go to my left. Mr. Scogno, Mr. Stoner, Mr. Connor, Ms. Andrews, Ms. Testaverde.
Nothing.
Is that the extent of the?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I was just going to give a brief statement, but then I don't know if.
I'll tell you what,
may
why don't you
wanna
let me
open
go
to the
public, and then we'll let you go back to your brief statement, okay? And we'll see if anybody has any comments before we go call for a vote. I assume you wanted to call for a vote at
Yes.
some point. Okay.
Yes, we do.
This is matter 06-2022Z. It's Reliance Adult Daycare, Inc. is the applicant. It's located 18 Marlborough Road for a senior daycare facility is seeking major preliminary final site plan with C and D variances. Does anyone here within the courtroom wish to comment on this matter, have questions, or seeking answers? None. I think everyone here is either one of the professionals or the next applicant, and none have raised their hands. I'm going to close the public portion at this point.
Thank
Back
you,
to
Mr.
you.
Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I just have a brief statement, just to summarize somewhat. First of all, I want to thank the board and obviously your professionals for, I guess, thoroughly vetting this application and working with the applicant on how to improve the plan, and certainly ensuring that the site plan works functionally. And obviously, it's important from an operational standpoint. I think I'm not going to go through all of the summary of all the witnesses' testimony. I would say that, with regard to this type of use, I believe that a strong argument could be made that it's inherently beneficial under the municipal land use law. Although, as Mr. Osiello indicated, it hasn't been specifically codified as such. But I think most land use boards in the state of New Jersey have recognized this as an inherently beneficial use. I guess as an aside, there was legislation that was actually sponsored in the legislature, which I don't know where the status is on that to amend the law. But in any event, I think Mr. Osiello did an excellent job going through the positive and negative criteria, assuming that the board doesn't accept this as inherently beneficial. I look at this sort of practical. As I'm sitting, if I'm a voting board member, I look at the census data, I look at your master plan, I look at the fact that due to the achievements in health, people are living longer. I think this need is going to continue to grow in the state of New Jersey and through the United States. We have an applicant who has an existing business in Old Bridge. He sees an opportunity now to grow that business. Where he's currently located, it just can't handle the potential anticipated volume for perhaps some more patrons. And I think from that vantage point, the fact that all of our witnesses testified that the site can accommodate the use, and I think site suitability is important here, because although it is on a highway, it does abut a residential area. And I think we've demonstrated that the parking is sufficient. I think we will address all the engineering comments. I think we will address all the traffic comments. that were in the memorandum. And I think not that any use can be described as benign, but given the odd shape of this particular property, it doesn't work for every use. And I think this particular adult daycare use, the site can appropriately accommodate the use. So for all those reasons, I would respectfully request that the board favorably review this application and act favorably. And I thank you again for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Himmelman. I think you read some of my notes, too.
Well, I've known you a few weeks.
I would just comment on the application as well. For those of us who have been here for a long time in this area, yourself, myself, Mr. Connor, probably several others, the history of Route 18, don't forget, never connected. And it wasn't only until probably in the later 70s, early 80s, when the connection actually went to the shore, which brought in a higher demand and higher traffic flow. You could see areas in East Brunswick where there's old homes from Racetrack Road down that used to be lived in. No one lives there anymore because no one wants to live on a major artery. So the design of Marlborough Road, probably when it was originally going out there, it was probably the main road versus the highway, which was probably one lane. Mr. Asiello strikes a chord. No one is going to build a home there. No one would want to. If you go by there, and many of us have, I'm sure, there's a heavy traffic flow. It's this benign. I wrote down a benign operation. It's a benign operation because it's going to sit off the road. It is going to provide some service to the community. I do happen to think that it's a special reason that it is particularly suited, not only there, but that it is good, beneficial to the community. Don't forget, in 2007, we granted a D variance. I sat on that board at that time for medical arts building, which would have had a higher traffic flow, as testified to by the traffic engineer. So I think there is the site suitability. This is a benign operation. We always have to fall back on the fact that the applicant has another operation of the same nature within our community, which seems to be doing rather well. The last thing I'll say is that, at least, not that it's the be-all and end-all, but there was not one person here in opposition this evening. I would think that at least is a testament to the fact that the neighborhood there probably doesn't want to see something that's of a higher operation and more traffic coming in. So this seems to be suited. And yes, I will agree with Mr. Asiello. This is a need that's coming more and more forward. The board members here, we've granted a similar use on Old Matawan Road. Again, the applicant has another one in operation. I think for all those reasons, I think that you certainly met the burden of proof in this application. I don't know how the board members are going to vote, but I'm going to ask them if they have any problem. If you want, sir, I'll call for a vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'll start on my left, Mr. Scogno. Mr. Stoner? Mr. Connor? Ms. Andrews? Okay, Ms. Testaverde? And Mr. Dasty, anything?
None, sir.
At this point, I guess, Mr. Dasty, we would start with a D1, followed by a D4. Should those pass? Then we'll move on to our bulks.
Yes, sir.
All right, so board members, this is the D1 use because this is R15 zone where this is not permitted use. So it would have to pass the use before we can go to any other variances. So I would ask anyone if they would be willing to call for the approval of a use variance for this operation at that location.
And Mr. Chairman, just so you're aware, in terms of granting the variances, I do have my notes in terms of the conditions of approval the applicant has agreed to. And certainly they would agree with the technical requirements of the board engineer and planners review memorandums. The signage has been testified to be moved back out of the right of way. They would work with the board of professionals and the conservation officer to make sure that plantings are acceptable to the township and the township planner and conservation officer. The color scheme and materials would be satisfactory to the boards of professionals of the building. Those were the highlights of the conditions of approval that I had. There's also going to be a bicycle parking erected for the employees.
Correct, and it would also be I agree with all those comments and conditions. It would also be subject to outside agency
Of course,
approvals.
that's always
Right,
standard in our resolutions. that
correct.
they'll
And in
have
this
to-
case, because it's significant, NJDOT access permit, any DEP, wetlands and/or stormwater review.
That's total agreement, correct?
Sir.
Anyone want to move this for approval?
Motion to approve, Connor?
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Testaverde? Ms. Testaverde seconds. Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes,
Miss Andrews,
Yes.
Miss Testaverde,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. As to D4, that's floor area ratio, 0.218, where 0.19 is max. We've heard testimony to that. Someone interested in moving that?
I'll move it.
Mr. Stoner, is there a second? Andrew seconds. Roll call.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
yes,
Miss Andrews,
Yes.
Miss Testaverde,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. Mr. Dasty, if you'd help me on this, can we take the bulks as a group, as written in this memorandum, minus the signage setback and any other ones that were?
Yes, sir. You can do the bulks all in one shot unless the board feels differently, but all the bulks set forth.
Is it okay with the board if we call them all as a bulk? I mean, as a group, I should say.
Yeah. So, and in Vina and Nicole's review memorandum, all of the bulks, which begin on page 6, continue to page 7. But for the signage setback, as testimony has been heard, that will be is no longer required, and the number of freestanding signs is going from 2 to 1.
And then we'll do the waivers after that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so as to the C, the bulk variances, someone move it, please. I will. Is there a second?
Connor, I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
yes,
Miss Andrews,
Yes.
Miss Testaverde,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. And finally, the waivers located on page 8 of the memorandum. Someone want to move it?
I'll move it. Second, Stoner.
Mr. Connor, followed by Mr. Stoner. Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
yes,
Miss Andrews,
Yes.
Miss Testaverde,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. That's major and preliminary.
Yes.
Major preliminary, we have to do that and then final, I believe, too. Okay, as the major preliminary site plan. I'll move it. Is there a second?
I'll second, Stoner.
Stoner seconds. Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
yes,
Miss Andrews, Miss Testaverde,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes, and of course, final site plan.
Connor, I'll move it. I'll second, Stoner.
Connor and Stoner again. Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
yes,
Miss Andrews,
Yes.
Miss Testaverde,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. Mr. Hillman, thank you and all your professionals for your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the board. I can speak for the applicant that he's very appreciative of the board's approval, and certainly to Nicole and Vina and all the staff. We want to thank the board, and normally I would say to the applicant, welcome to Old Bridge, but he's here, so perhaps
here.
we can say, welcome to Route 18.
Yeah. Best of luck on the project.
Thank you very much, and again, thank the board, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Hillman. We have one more matter. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break for the stenographer. Oh, actually, you're not involved. You're going home. We'll give you a couple minutes to, the board can use 5 minutes. And we'll go to the last application. I believe that's you folks sitting right in the front row, right? Take a quick 5-minute recess. This is zoning board of adjustment meeting October 6, 2022. We're back on the record. May we have a roll call, Missy?
Chairman Sullivan,
Here.
Mr. Connor,
Here.
Mr. Stoner, Mr. Scogno,
here,
Miss Andrews,
Here.
Miss Testaverde,
Here.
Mr. Dasty,
Here.
Miss Sawant,
Here.
and myself, Miss C. Thank you.
This is the final application for this evening, board. It's 26-2022Z. It's Dmitry Dryakov, am I saying that right? This is medium high density residential R5 zone, block 54, lot 221, located 221 Cleveland Avenue. This is for home addition requiring a C and D variance. Sir, are you going to be the only one testifying this evening? Would your wife be testifying at all? You can both be sworn in if you'd like, and that way if she wants to interject something, she could, but she can't unless she's sworn. She's good? Why don't you come forward, sir? The board attorney is going to swear you in. He's going to give you an advisory on the record.
Sir, right there, can you raise your right hand for me, sir? You swear to or affirm to testify truthfully in this matter before the board?
I do.
And let's have your first and last name, sir.
Dmitry Zhukov, Driukov.
You're the owner of the property?
Yes, sir.
Sir, you can have a seat. So as I advised you earlier, when we were off the record, you sat on the earlier application where there's a court reporter sitting in that chair right there, typing everything down everybody's saying. And the reason, and because it's a D variance, a use variance, you're generally required to supply a court reporter. If you don't, you waive it at your own right, or at your own risk, I should say. And the reason why a court reporter is beneficial is so they take down what everything that's said, all the findings of fact that the board makes, the questions, the answers, everything, so that if anyone is unhappy with what had happened, be it you, the board, somebody in the audience, and a lawsuit is filed challenging the action, the judge and all parties will get a booklet that'll have exactly what happened, who said what the questions and answers were. That's what we call a record. And that's what any action of the board is based upon. It's based upon what happens in these walls of this room tonight on your application. So not having a court reporter here is something that you are waiving at your own risk, because it's certainly, if it's going to hurt anyone not having a court reporter, it would hurt you as the applicant. So understanding all of that, are you waiving that right to have a court reporter? And you understand the right that you are waiving?
I do.
All right, sir, you're making application to the board for an addition on your home that obviously you presently live in.
Yes.
Correct? As the board attorney advised you, this is, there's two types of variances you're dealing with here, which a C variance would be more of a minor variance. A D variance requires a different level of proof. So we're going to need you to at least put some things on the record for the board to make an informed judgment. So I will ask Mr. Dasty, while he is not an attorney for you, I'm going to make sure that I get you hopefully to elicit the right things on the record. And Mr. Dasty will try and do that to a degree. So you're a homeowner here. We are volunteer citizens as well, other than the professionals who work for the town and Mr. Dasty, who's our attorney. We're interested in trying to help you if we can, so we can make an informed decision. So what we're going to need you to do is tell us what you're going to do, how you're going to do that, why you need to do that. Is it going to have any effect on your neighbors? All of those things that you may have exhibits for or may not, but we're going to have to kind of visualize this whole thing in our head. So take your time, proceed at your own risk here, and at your own pace, I should say. And then the professionals will tell us why you're here. We may have questions, the professionals that may have questions, you may have questions. And at some point, if it gets too deep and perhaps you think that it's not going in the right direction, you could always ask for a continuance. Or you can ask me to have the board take a vote. And if you think that's in jeopardy, then I would suggest perhaps you go and take a continuance at that juncture. But that'll come later on. So why don't you just proceed right now and tell us what's going on.
Yes, sir. So the plan is we have a single home, single story house,
right,
and it's currently 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and our goal is to add the second floor of the same size as the main floor, and move the same 2 bedrooms upstairs, and the bathroom is going to be upstairs. So pretty much we only seeking some extra square footage inside the house. So we're not going to add any additional bathrooms or bedrooms, and we're not going to extend the second floor over the existing walls of the main floor, and so in terms of the neighbors, the plan is we're not going to bother them during renovation. We do have quite enough space on the side to bring the dumpster, the scaffolds to do the work, and we're estimating to accomplish it pretty quick, so everybody would get back to normal as soon as possible.
Okay. How long have you owned that home, sir?
Since 2018.
2002. Do you know when that home was built?
If I'm not mistaken, 1940.
Okay. And it's pretty much remained the same. So you've overgrown its use. Do you know the history of those homes there? They were summertime homes,
Yeah, like
bungalows.
bungalows, right.
Okay. So you know about that,
Mhm.
right? Okay. So it's not uncommon that people have come in and they've tried to better their own style of living and make more room for their families. So we are cognizant of that. And you're down right off 35, right, in the President Streets down there? Okay, I'm just trying to give the board, if they're not familiar, where you're at. There's a picture on Google, which I can't use, but could you tell me if that is your home that I'm looking at?
Yes, so that's how it used to be in 2018, yes.
Okay. And you're looking to top that floor off. Are you going to go outside the footprint of the house? Do you know what the footprint means? That piece of paper right there would be your footprint.
This one?
No. What I'm saying is picture this as the house.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
And here's your foundation all the way around.
Right.
Okay. Are you going to build beyond that foundation?
No, just straight up.
Straight up. So you're not going outside what we call the footprint?
None.
No.
Yeah.
Why don't I ask the planner to help us out and find out why you need this, and we can move from there. Ms. Sawant?
Sure. Board members, as you are aware, this property is within the R5 zone. We have had numerous applications in front of the zoning board for floor area ratio variances. That is why this applicant is in front of you as well. The issue with R5 zone, and I have said this numerous times, it is on my list of things to fix or take care of, but there are others that take priority, and it's been a pending issue. But the R5 zone had a minimum lot size of 5,000 square feet. However, from your past experience and for board members that are new, none of the homes within the R5 zone really are 5,000 square feet. The average lot size there is somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500 square feet, which is half of what is allowed or what is required by the zone. What happens is when these smaller lots try to build a fully compliant home, the house wouldn't be more than 800 to 900 square feet. And as you all know, to live in a 900 square feet home is a challenge for a family that is trying to raise kids. So we have had numerous applications wherein applicants have come in, added a floor. Yes, it has changed the character of the neighborhood. The community that used to be single-story bungalow-style homes now have second floors on those homes. So the footprint has changed. However, I feel the 800 square feet is very difficult to live with. The one thing I want you to testify, and I know I have it in my memo too, none of the homes in that block really are at an FAR that the applicant is proposing. So it poses a little bit of a challenge because there are other lots in the block that have the highest FAR is 0.37, whereas the asking FAR is 0.61. And this is a typical question I ask the applicant: have you tried to keep the FAR at minimum? How did you arrive to this size of the home? Was it the extra bedroom, extra workspace, or bathroom? How did you come up with the footprint for the second, not the footprint, the area for the second floor?
So pretty much, as you can see on that sketch on the blueprint, where the all the way to the left, I'm not sure what does it say there. Yeah, the new family room. So you can see the dashed lines showing the existing two bedrooms. And yes, in 2018, when we purchased that home, that was good for us because my daughter, she was quite small, so, and she didn't require a lot of space. So now she's growing with all the stuff from the school. She requires more space, and I'm not that of an issue. I hardly home, so, but she needs more space. That's why we're moving her bedroom upstairs, so she can have like a workstation and yeah, and more space for her own.
I understand. Can you do you have any pictures of your backyard? I just want to see what the backyard looks like. Is it landscaped, or is it covered with a patio? What is in the?
There's a small deck and pretty much grass and a small shed in the back.
Okay. I do not have any further questions. I just want to let the board know that although there are other C variances that are involved, all of them are actually existing non-conformities. However, because there's a vertical addition, they're still counted as new variances, because in the past you may have seen that when there is an existing non-conformity, my review usually says existing non-conformity. But because with the new addition on the top, it triggers a new variance, and that's why you will see the new 3 C variances. However, in reality, those are existing setbacks. The property owner is not intruding or exasperating the existing non-conformities. So you should keep that in mind. The other issue I had raised was parking. Lawrence Harbor does not have their individual parking spaces. It's a challenge. This existing home does not have any parking, and that's again an existing non-conformity. It's not like they're adding a new unit that would exasperate the parking variance, but it is what it is. There is no parking on the site.
You have no driveway whatsoever?
No.
Can you explain? I know in your survey there's a shed. You do have a driveway, but the driveway is shared between your property and the neighbor's property. It's right on the screen there. So what is the how do you use the driveway, or you don't use it at all?
So there's a fence on that side, right where the thick line is. So that's why nobody uses it. I'm sorry? No, the white one.
It looks like a cyclone on the.
Because from the survey, it appears that at some point there was a shared driveway which was intended to be used by the 2 homeowners, and probably not an ideal situation, because if one homeowner is parked and then somebody comes and parks at the back, you're really locked. You can't get out unless the car behind you backs out. So I don't know what the purpose was, but I did notice that on your survey, that there was a shared driveway. So I was just curious to find out if that was ever used. Do you know anything about it?
No, to be honest with you, when I bought that, the agent, he never mentioned that. He told me I don't have a driveway, so that's why we keep one car in front of the house and one car on the street.
Is there on-street parking there?
It's like the street parking. First comes.
Okay. Yeah.
Looks like it there
It's
is.
the
Looks like
typical
there is,
Lawrence
yeah.
Harbor.
Um,
Yeah,
is,
it is. And
You have an entranceway on the side of the house as well?
Yeah, there's a gate in the fence.
No, exiting the home. Where's your other exit? You come in the front door or side or back?
There's a patio door, yeah, all the way in the back, and one of the bedrooms, yes.
Towards the rear.
that's all on my end.
All right, let me see if board members have any questions. Mr. Scogno, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. You have what, a loft now above the first floor? Because I do see a window there on both sides.
Yeah, it's like an attic, but it's
Pulled down?
yeah. So there's only a
not a livable
HVAC
space.
unit there. There's nothing else.
So you use it for storage?
No, it's just for the HVAC. Nothing else.
I see. And you're looking like you want to go up 8 feet
Yes.
addition. Yeah. So you would be towering over your neighbor, both left and right.
Yeah. So on the right-hand side, the 220. So that's a two-story building.
Yes.
And yeah, so on the left, it's the same size bungalow. Yes.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
On the,
And just so the board's aware, I mean, certainly, I understand the concern about going up, another floor, but all the surrounding property owners would have received notice, and just so the board's aware, presumably if one of the neighbors had an issue, they would be here, yeah.
what's this?
Well, that's a good question. Are there other two-story homes in your area?
Yeah, so you can actually see quite a lot of them down Cleveland Avenue towards the Route 35 and on the Bayview Drive. When you're approaching to Cleveland, so there are also a few of them, pretty
So-
much with the same configuration of the lot.
So then, sir, is it your testimony that what you're proposing, in your opinion, is not out of character with what other properties are doing in the area?
Correct. Yes.
Is the home next to you, the yellow house, is that taller?
Which one?
There is a home right next to you, I believe.
Vacant?
Yeah, that's the big one, right? These
Yes,
are the neighbors. Yes.
That is much taller than your home, right?
The one we're going to build, I believe so, because they have those.
No. I'm asking your neighbor's home. Is it a single story structure or is it a taller structure? It is
Yeah.
right now taller than
Yeah,
your house, correct?
It's a two-story building. Yes.
It's a two-story building.
Right.
So your second story addition will not completely be out of character because your neighbor already has a two-story structure.
Yes,
Is that
ma'am.
what?
So
Yes.
you understand, what you're proposing is not going to stand out.
No, because pretty much like on that side of the street, I'm sorry, 3 out of 5 homes are two-story buildings.
I also notice on the other side
Questions?
of the street on
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Venus still has.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I also noticed that on the other side of Cleveland there are other homes that are two-story as well, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Now I'll go from left to right. Mr. Scogno, did you have anything?
No, sir, I visited the home today or yesterday. But 220 is much taller than his home.
That would be the lot if you were in front of his house to the left,
To the right,
to the right. Mr. Stoner?
I have photos if you want.
Yeah, I have a question for you. So where's the AC unit? Because right now, it's up in the ceiling, right?
Yes.
So where's that being moved to?
So I'm planning to upgrade it with a split system. So I'm going to put the unit itself outside the house where the existing cooling unit is, and just have the split system throughout the house. So that eliminates the use of gas, and it's much more energy efficient.
Because you didn't show that though in your plans though, right?
Not yet.
To the rear of the home?
So where the deck is right now, on that tiny spot on the right-hand side of the building, so that's where the existing cooling unit is. So that's where we're planning to put the new system.
Replace that.
Yeah. So and take away everything from inside the house.
Yeah. We can't use those pictures, obviously, because they're not, we can't verify them or identify them other than what they put on the internet. But you're not submitting any to us other than what you've told us, right? And what you, under oath, what you've told us about the character of the neighborhood.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Stoner, did you have anything? Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Connor? Jim, you might.
You had to deliver a notice to anyone within 200 feet of your home, correct?
Yes, sir.
How did you do that?
Certified mail?
Certified mail?
Yes, sir.
And what type of feedback? Did you get any feedback at all?
No, I only got the green cards back.
Within that 200 feet, how many two-story homes were there?
I'd say most of them.
What percentage?
So there were about 50 homes. So I would say at least 30 of them.
So that's more than half.
Yes.
Interesting. Thank you.
Notification has been made, correct? And we have proof of that? Ms. Andrews?
Did you have an architect do your plans? Or
Yes, ma'am.
You have some? Because I noticed on here that there was no one that was mentioned as the architect. Also, when you mentioned it, you said something about putting up the bedrooms in the bathroom. Are you going to eliminate the bathroom on the main floor?
We're going to convert it into a powder room.
Oh, okay. But you're not going to get rid of, you're not getting rid of it altogether.
Right. So we're just going to keep the toilet bowl and the
commode
vanity.
and the sink,
Yes.
yeah, I understand. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Destin. All right, and would it be your testimony that exactly what you're presenting us with tonight is what you plan to do should we give you approval?
Yes, sir.
Without alteration?
No alteration.
And you would comply with any suggestions from the township or the zoning or the building officials
For sure.
as to permits and inspections, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes.
All right. Swan, anything?
No further questions.
Well, I would say that I can understand your situation there. It's not foreign in the sense that we've handled many of these improvements and top-offs, if you will, on homes in that area. So it is kind of common. I can see that it's probably very hard to live in something like that. When I was young, I remember renting them down the shore or something with a couple guys, and 2 or 3 guys were too much for those type of homes. So I can understand that with your family, your need to let your daughter grow and enjoy her privacy and her studies. So I feel confident that you're coming here in full faith, telling this board that what you have presented is what you're going to do and nothing more, nothing less.
Right.
I believe that he may have met the burden of proof on.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I mean, certainly for a D variance, the burden of proof is that the application should be granted without a substantial detriment to the public good and will not impair the intent of the zone plan and zoning ordinance. Now, you've heard comments from Mr. Want that there in fact really are rarely any 5,000 square foot properties in the R5 zone. This property is 2,000 square, or the property itself is 2,000 square feet, which is entirely consistent with other properties in the area. One of the other elements of a D variance is that it can be granted without a substantial detriment to the public good. There are, special reasons necessary. And as the applicant testified, that there are, in fact, significant homes in the area that have second floors that his proposal is not out of character with the area and the neighborhood, the changing area. The reason why he's doing it is to benefit his family, to have a second floor and privacy, better bedrooms, and better his family. So certainly for all those reasons, those are significant, unrefuted evidence actually before the board. No members of the public have appeared. They've all received.
We'll open that in a minute. I didn't
I'm
do
sorry.
it yet, but
Sorry.
it's okay.
And certainly no, well, you can take it to the bank that there's no member of the public here that is here to object. And certainly, he's done a noble job of putting on the proofs, and I think it's ripe for consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Dasty. And Ms. Swan, it was 0.40 is allowable, and this is 0.61, correct? Yeah. According to page 4 on the top, on the D4. Sir, if you have no objection, I'm going to have to open up a public portion by regulation, so I'm going to make sure that there's no one here that's going to object to this. This is matter 26-2022Z, located 221 Cleveland Avenue for home addition, requiring C D variance. Is there anyone here in the courtroom that wants to be heard in this matter? Absent your family, sir, there's no other people, and I didn't see your daughter rise up to object, so I think she'll be happy to get another bedroom. I'm going to close the public portion. Mr. Dasty, I think that he may have met the burden of proof. We could take a vote on this.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I jumped the gun a little bit at the last go around. He tossed it to me, but yes, I do believe in my humble opinion, certainly the burden of proof has been is met. I'll leave it to the board, but he's done a noble job in putting forth his proofs. And as we've, I think, confirmed up here, that his proposal is not out of character with his neighbors in the area.
Thank you, Mr. Dasty. Any final comments or problems from the board? On my left. On my right. This would require a D4 variance for the floor area ratio. If that survives, there are some bulk variances, I believe.
Yes, sir. And all of the bulks, as Vina already indicated, are existing conditions. And actually, one of the bulks he's improving, it looks like, right? So.
Okay. Does anyone want to move this for D4 for approval?
Move it, Scogno.
Is there a second?
Second, Connor?
Connor seconds. Roll call, please, as to D4.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
I'm going to say yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Ms. Andrews,
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes, and as to the bulks, someone want to move them? These are pre-existing, non-conforming.
I'll move it, Stoner.
Scogno, second it.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Ms. Andrews,
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
You know, it's great when people improve on their own homes. It means that they like the community they're in, they like where they're living. So it makes it your investment better, and it makes it better and stronger for the community. So my vote is yes. Make sure you get all your building permits. A resolution on this won't be until
I'll have it ready at the next meeting, sir.
by the next meeting. So you can't do anything until you get the actual resolution. You understand, right? You can go seek out your building permits. All right?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Best of luck to all of you.
Thank you.
You're getting the big bedroom now.
The master bedroom.
Thanks. You're free to go. Board members, that does end our agenda this evening. General public comments. I don't have any. There are no more no one in the room. I'll entertain anything from any of the board members, starting on my left.
Nothing, sir.
Nothing. Mr. Stoner, good? Nothing. Nothing on the right. Ms. Sawant?
Just a reminder, we have a special meeting October 17th for the 2 firehouses.
October
17th.
The special meeting is on Monday, October 17th.
We will send out, the planning office will send a reminder.
Yep. And then we would have another meeting that week on the 20th.
Yes, we do, which is a C night, and
That one will be virtual.
that will be virtual. So that
October
helps.
20th.
The C, 20th will be
C
virtual.
night, that Thursday will be virtual.
We like coming here. We should probably change them all to come here, but
You know what,
in the
that's,
future. In the
yes.
future. Anybody final comments? None? Okay. Thank everybody for hanging in there tonight. It was a little bit longer than anticipated. Fortunately, we didn't have the third one to do. We'll pick that up. We'll pick that up next time. Everybody have a great weekend. Someone want to move for an adjournment? Mr. Stoner, all in favor? Any opposed?
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. C.